Hi, everyone. This is Michele Graglia.
This is Marianne Hogan.
Hi, I'm Adrian McDonald.
I'm Katie Asmith.
Hi, this is Anthony Gasals.
Hi, my name is Meg Morgan.
Hey, it's Jordan Trove.
This is John Ray.
This is Ryan Van Duzer, and you are listening to the Gotta Run Racing Podcast.
Hey everybody, we're back with another GottaRunPodcast. How are you all doing?
Hey there, I'm Jody.
And I'm Norm, your host for today's afternoon.
Delight.
What's happening in the world of Gotta Run Racing?
Well, we've announced our 2025 dates on Instagram, which are June 14th for Rainbow Trail Run at Earl Rowe Provincial Park, which is it. Yes, that's a new date. We're moving away from the end of July in the hopes that it won't be so hot.
Yes, very good.
Because we hear you. It is hot in Ontario at that time of year, but at least the park is mostly shaded.
Mm-hmm.
So that's new.
And hopefully the pool will be open.
Yes, the long-awaited pool reconstruction.
Yep.
And then we also have, of course, Labor Day Island Lake Classic on Monday, September the 1st. It's early this year.
And also, we're going to launch or relaunch our We Run the North virtual runs, right?
Yes, we are.
Where you can run virtually 10K in one national park in every province and territory.
That's right. And you get a cool medal representing the park. You get a bib that has the province's license plate on it. And there might be some surprise magnets and other goodies in there too. So watch for that. We'll definitely launch it on Instagram. And if you're signed up for our newsletter, you'll get an email in advance.
And all that you can be found on our website, GottaRunRacing.com. And you recently just came back from a trip to Mexico. What happened there?
I sure did. It was a girls' trip to celebrate Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. And we went to Mexico City, as well as the city of Morelia. And it was absolutely amazing. We saw the Katrina parades. We had street food. On the night of the Day of the Dead, we went to a few cemeteries to see how the people celebrate. And it's really quite spectacular. They have such an interesting way to honor the dead. It's a lot less somber than the way that we do it here in Canada. And I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it if it's something that you are interested in experiencing. And it was a great way to see another side of Mexico. I haven't been to Mexico in
17 years.
17 years. And of course, we always go to the resorts and the Mayan Riviera or whatever, but this was completely different and I felt safe and really enjoyed getting to know people and experiencing their culture.
And very little English.
Very little English, even in Mexico City. Yes. So.
Very good.
It was very authentic.
Nice.
Yeah.
And back to our regular scheduled program. Who's on the podcast today?
Today we have Jordan Brett, who's a 32-year-old runner living in Vancouver, originally from the UK. We really don't know that much about him, but that's why we wanted to talk to him today. We do know that he's run Chuckanut 50K several times, and in the last couple of years running there, he took on Matt Daniels, Claire Gallagher, and a few former podcast guests, including Blake Slatengren, Priscilla Forgy, and Kat Drew. Last year, he also ran the Canyons in California, which we believe was his first 100K. This past August, he stepped it up with his first 100-miler at the Hood 100 in Oregon. But the big story is that he was the first male to cross the finish line in 8 hours and change at Javelina 100K a couple weeks ago. So lots to chat about.
All right. Without further ado, here's Jordan coming up. Well, welcome, Jordan, to the podcast, and big congrats on being first male crossing the finish line at Javelina. How did that feel?
Thank you. Yeah, incredible. It was such a shock, to be honest. I didn't expect to get first, so it was pretty incredible when it happened.
Well, our viewers are dying to know everything about you, so let's go back to the beginning. And how did this whole running journey start?
Yeah, well, growing up, I was more of a team sport guy. I grew up in England, so I've been in Canada now for about 7 years. So I grew up in England and I played all the classic English sports, cricket, football, rugby. And I was kind of forced into cross country and I absolutely hated it. So I didn't really do it, but I was good at it. I was kind of forced into it. I was told I could leave a lesson early from school, so I chose to do it. And then it wasn't until after university my mum was going through cancer treatment at the time. And I decided to run a race for cancer research just to raise some money. And I ran a 10K and I ran it just under sub 40. So I thought, this is pretty good. So yeah, I loved it. And then I just kept going from there. And I ran like 5Ks, 10Ks for a couple years. I didn't really delve too much into longer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, the thought of longer stuff was never in my mind. And then randomly, I was traveling around Europe and I was in Budapest and I was going on a train ride to Romania. And it was like a 12-hour train ride. And what do I do on a train ride? So there was a local like bookstore that was all in just English books.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there perusing the shelves and then I saw a book about running. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get this. And it was Eat and Run by Scott Jurek.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I had no idea what trail running was, ultra running, veganism. I didn't know any of that at the time. So I read this entire book on the train and yeah, my mind was opened. I don't want to say I instantly wanted to run Badwater, but there was definitely, some enthusiasm to run. I think that day is when I decided I wanted to run a 100-mile race.
Really?
Yeah, it just kind of captured my imagination. I was like, I think that's something I should be doing.
Wow.
Did you know who Scott Jurek was?
No, not till reading that book. I had no idea. Yeah. This was in 2015, I think.
Mm.
Yeah,
Okay.
2015. I had no idea, especially growing up in England, right? You didn't really hear about him. Yeah. So I just like opened my mind to what was possible. I hadn't even run a marathon at this point. And then I instantly signed up for a marathon, got home from Europe, I just started running 20-mile long runs, which I'd never done before. I ran my first 20-mile long run. I puked afterwards, didn't eat any food, was vomiting the whole day, basically.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And then I signed up. I ran one marathon and then I signed up for a 50-mile race in England.
Mm.
I think it was 6 months after that, after running my first marathon.
Wow.
And then just started running ultras from there.
What race was that, Jordan?
It's called Pedder's Way Ultramarathon. It's in the county I grew up in, which is Norfolk, which is on the east coast of England.
Okay.
It's a very flat part of the country. It's a pretty cool race because it follows an old Roman road. So the length of the race is actually what the entire road used to be.
Oh,
Wow.
that's nice.
You just kind of, it's really cool concept. So you're just running through like farmlands and on roads, and then you finish at the seaside on the beach.
That sounds amazing.
And they add this little Barclay Marathon-esque bit to it. You have to run to the beach and then back to the local village hall.
Uh-huh.
And you have to grab a page from a book at the beach to prove you went to the, because you run right past that place. So you have to prove it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
When was that?
That was January 2017.
Do you see yourself going back to do that one again now?
See how
I
you...
would love to do that. I would love to do it. Just as kind of like a nostalgic thing. I ended up coming sixth in that race somehow. But yeah, I would definitely love to go back. Although going back to England in January is not really, at the forefront of my mind. Not that the weather is really ever good there, but January is not really the best time.
Speaking of that, what brought you to Canada?
I had a partner at the time who lived with me in England who was Canadian. And then I moved out here for a 2-year work and holiday visa.
Uh-huh.
And then fell in love with it. Just decided to stay. Yeah. I got my permanent residency. I was actually applying for my permanent residency during COVID time or just before COVID hit.
Oh, lucky.
Yeah. It was January 2020. I started applying and I just made it before everything shut down. And it was a stressful period, but
I bet. Do you remember your first trail run in BC?
I don't specifically remember the first one, but I do remember, I'm sure you've heard of the Neenacker.
Yes.
Neenacker, for people who don't know, is in like the Deep Cove area and it does the full Baden-Powell Trail.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a 50K race, and it's kind of a brutal race. I've never done it, actually. But they do free training runs for it. So I signed up, or just turned up for one of these training runs, and Ellie Greenwood was running it.
Oh,
nice.
Like, I think I'd been, it was really cool. I think I'd been here for a couple of weeks, maybe. And it was the first time I ran in trails in North Vancouver, which are very different to the trails I was running in England. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And I remember we started going on and up. I felt pretty good. And then the thing I noticed the most was everyone's downhill ability
oh yeah.
on technical trail. I was so slow and like so nervous running downhill on those trails. And then everyone was just flying past me. So that was it was like a big welcome to Canadian running for sure. Yeah. And at that time, I think before I moved here, I'd signed up for a race. I moved here in April, and the race was in July.
Ooh.
It's a Gary Robbins race, and it's called Buck in Hell.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Buck in Hell is a 50K, and it has 9,000 feet of elevation gain. And it's on the North Shore trails, which are extremely technical. And I had no concept of what that meant at the time. And I soon found out.
I was going to say, having come from the part of England that you did, there's some pretty gnarly sections in England where they do the fell running and that. But I suppose you hadn't experienced that when you lived there. No. Yeah, the county I'm from is just, there's a lot of, my parents were living about 5 minutes from the coast. So there's a lot of like coastal paths, which are challenging in a different way, right? Like quite sandy, but most of the time the trails I were running weren't really trails. You know what I mean? They're just mud, gravel, bike path kind of thing. Yeah. And I wasn't, like, if I was living there now, I for sure would go to the Fells and the Peak District and all that, but I just didn't know at the time what everything was about. So I was just running locally. Yeah, well, you dove in head first, I would say.
Yeah, with complete ignorance.
That's the best way, isn't it?
It helps. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Another race that you liked to do that we did research on is the Chuckanut 50K. I guess it's because it's close to where you live. It's only an hour drive, I think. And the elite field of runners that show up at the start line. Is that the reason why you keep going back there?
One of the reasons, for sure. Yeah. It's such a fun race. I love how it has that high caliber, field and feel to it, but it's also just feels very grassroots and local.
Mm.
It feels very relaxed. The atmosphere is really cool. There's no parking at the start line. So you have to get a shuttle bus there, but it's a Mount Baker ski bus. It's like an old school bus with stickers over it and like the seats are falling out. I love it. That's like one of the best parts of the race day. It's just such a cool experience. And then they do an after party at a brewery, which other people try and do, but everyone's there. Francesco Pupi is just sitting there having a beer. It's pretty cool that the atmosphere is really cool. The trails are great too. It's a beautiful course.
Is it technical?
Not particularly. There's a ridge line, which is a couple of kilometers, which is fairly technical, and then the rest is extremely runnable.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, that's why those times are very fast.
Yeah.
even like most of the elevation is on. There's one big wide Forest Service road that you're just going up for 5K. So you get a lot of the elevation is very runnable too.
Okay. And then last year, we think your first 100K experience was at Canyons.
Yes.
Wow. What a race to pick for your first 100.
Yeah. Well, the goal of mine is to go to the UTMB World Series.
Yes.
So you got to do those races, haven't you? Unfortunately. Not unfortunately, but the travel involved and stuff. Yeah, that was a baptism by fire, quite literally, to be honest. It was in April last year, and there was a heat wave. It happened in BC too, but the days we went, there was a heat wave both here and in California. And I think 2 days for the race, it got up to 35 degrees Celsius. And then a couple days later, it was back to like 17. I was in San Francisco after a race and I was freezing. They had like a 3-day heat wave and it happened to hit at that point.
Oh, bummer.
And the problem is in April, you have not been acclimatized to any kind of heat, or was I expecting it? So I did no heat training. I was running a local race here called the Diaz Vista 50K about, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks before.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 2 degrees and freezing rain. And then I went to that and it was hot. So incredible racer.
I'm sure, though, you were on a level playing field. Everybody was not prepared for that heat unless they were coming from Arizona or something. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. It definitely, there was a lot of carnage that year. I think they had the record amount of dropouts that year because of the heat.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like we were on track, people were just slumped under trees, and it was kind of wild. I experienced, I think it was about 60K, and I started getting nosebleeds.
Oh,
wow.
And I had never experienced that before. I just kind of like had a runny nose, wiped it, and it was blood. And then I guess from the dusty, like it was very dusty, very dry and hot. But when you're in the middle of your first 100K, you're not necessarily thinking logically. So I was a bit concerned.
definitely not.
I got it done anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, that happened to me at Western States. First time ever of all my 20 years career, I got a nosebleed at Western States, which very unfortunate place to get it. But anyway.
Yeah.
This year, you upped your ante again, running your first 100-miler, we believe, at Hood 100.
Hood 100.
Yeah. Tell us about that, because it's 17,000 feet of gain, and the views must be spectacular. We don't know much about that race, so tell us about that race.
Yeah. Well, it was the first year the race had been put on, which I don't think I would normally do, but the company that puts them on, Daybreak Racing, are just such a good race organization. Earlier in the year, I did Gorge Waterfalls, which has been around for a little while now.
Yeah.
It used to be a different race company, but then they took over. So I did that, and just their organization's incredible. And they do a lot of races in Oregon and Washington. So I know a lot of people have done their races. So I had like a lot of confidence going into my first 100-miler with a new race that it was going to be a good race. And yeah, it was incredible. Just like the staging area was at the ski hill right in front of Mount Hood. So the views were incredible. It was really, I slept in my car the days before and after.
Oh, wow.
Just because you could park for free in the parking lot right in front. So it was just, you just woke up and then walked over to the start line. Because it was my first 100-mile, I just was going fully to immerse myself in the experience of the whole weekend, right? Being there and kind of not slumming it, but you know what I mean? Like just experiencing it in that respect. And yeah, the trails were incredible. And they were quite varied too, because at one point we crossed the highway closer to Mount Hood. And then you were in a lot of volcanic ash.
Oh.
Which was quite difficult to run through. It was like quite sandy, but the trails on that side of the road were much different because they were closer to the base of the mountain. So it was like very volcanic, which was really interesting to see. There was a cool waterfall we ran to. And then just like the experience of the race itself, the aid stations, they have a lot of them are running groups, which is always the case, right? But a lot of them running groups, and they had theme to them. So Y East Wolfpack, who Yassine Daboon works with, they had one, and they were dressed up as builders, and they actually did one at Gorge Waterfalls, which was really fun. And they were dressed up in tuxedos, and they were handing out ginger ale in flip glasses, champagne flip glasses.
Nice.
Which is really fun. So they do a good job of creating an atmosphere like that. There was a group from Idaho. I can't remember their name now. They wear all cow print. And I got to their aid station in the middle of the night. And I'd never ran through the night before, so it was my first experience. And I was like the only person there. And it was just a great experience. See people, you know what I mean? Like hang out with people in the middle of the night on a mountain.
Yeah.
And then just kind of wandering away. So it was a great experience. It was everything I wanted from my 100-mile experience. Like I wasn't going there to set any records or try and run fast. I was just there to like experience it all. And I certainly did.
What month was that?
That was August, the start of August.
So you first read Scott Jurek's book in 2017, is that right?
A bit before that. I think it was the late 2015.
So it took you about 9 years to do your first 100-miler after you were ready to do the 100-miler that day.
Yeah, I know. well, you know, I'm not that stupid.
Very good.
I was mentally ready. Yeah. And some things slowed that. I guess COVID probably slowed that down. But I think I was ready to run a 100-mile last year and just I ran the 100K and then, waited a little bit. And then this year I've just got to commit and do it.
I think that was very wise of you. You worked your way up as opposed to jumping head first in, because if that first experience had gone poorly, who knows whether you'd still be doing it again, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And then at least now I had, a positive, enjoyable. You know,
Right.
most people don't say that about running 100 miles. It was like such one of my funnest races where I've just been like,
Relax.
so happy throughout it. Yeah, relaxed and happy throughout it.
Right.
There was minimal low moments, which is kind of shocking.
I was just about to ask you that, actually. Was there any surprises in what you didn't expect jumping from 100K to 100 mile, or
Especially going through the night for the first time.
Yeah, any surprises there?
Not really, to be honest. I was quite shocked how well it went. Like the night running, actually, I really enjoyed. I think it could have gone one or two ways, but I really enjoyed just how the forest changed. It was just a completely different experience with the different sounds and how calm it felt.
Yeah.
We had ideal weather, so that helped. It was fairly cool during the day for August, but then overnight didn't really lose its temperature. I didn't have to deal with too many clothing changes or anything or getting cold or anything like that. So the night running I actually really enjoyed. I think the main thing I dealt with was a tiny amount of chafing, but a small amount. I didn't get any blisters.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It was kind of wild. I had a few energy lows here and there, but in the main, I had just done I've kind of struggled over the last couple of years with cramping and energy lows. So in the past year, I've kind of dialed in my fueling and sodium intake.
Mm-hmm.
And this race was the first time where I was properly testing how much sodium I was taking and how many grams of carbs per hour I was taking. So my energy throughout was pretty good. So I found when I had a low mentally, when I thought about negative things, I was able to deal with them a little bit easier than I had done in the past. I didn't kind of spiral and I was able to move on, I think, because I just had a bit more cognitive function from fueling a bit better.
Right. That makes sense. Well, good for you.
Well, congrats. You finished Hood 100 in just over 22 hours and you get a nice ticket to Western States. So you could be throwing your name in the hat in the lottery.
Already have.
Of course.
Yeah. November 1st. As soon as it opened, I was registering. Yeah. You're registered too?
Oh, yeah, same here.
Nice.
He promised me that his 100-miler days were over, but every time he gets a ticket, he's like, well, I have to throw it in.
Of course.
Western States is different, right?
It is different.
Yeah. How many tickets do you have for this one?
I'm up to 4 now.
Nice.
But it's so hard. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole like I did before, because the last time it took me 7 years. So I'm debating, if I don't get in now, do I call it quits because I already have my experience, or do I just go down that rabbit hole again? I don't know.
Yeah. It's a hard decision to make.
Very hard decision.
Yeah. I only have 2, so I might have a few more years left.
Well, go grab yourself a golden ticket. Get there faster.
There you go.
Yeah. Totally.
All right. Well, let's get to Javelina. Why this race? Why did you choose Javelina?
My good friend and coach as well, I think she's coached me now for about 3 years, Janelle Hazlitt, who lives out here. She lives on the coast now, Sunshine Coast. She ran the race last year, the 100K, and asked me to pace her.
Okay.
So I went out to pace her last year, and she ended up coming second female last year.
Nice.
So it was just an incredible experience seeing it. Obviously, I'd seen it online before that. I think it's hard to encapsulate what it is until you've been there.
Yes.
I think because the images definitely do it justice of the scope of it, but the atmosphere you really feel the atmosphere when you're there. And it's just a wild, wild race. It's like nothing I've ever experienced in running. I just love the concept of everything about it.
Yeah.
I've never really loved the idea of doing multiple loops. I think from a competitive standpoint, benefits you a lot from doing that.
Yes.
So I was just captured last year by doing it. And I think as soon as Janelle finished, she was like, "You're doing it next year." So I think as soon as they opened registration, I signed up just because I wanted to experience that again. I'm very glad I did.
Yeah,
very glad I
I
did.
can see that.
100K is 3 loops. So tell us about how the first loop went down. How are you feeling getting that first loop over with?
The first loop, weirdly, which I've never experienced in Ultra, was the hardest of the 3.
Really?
Yeah. I typically in Ultras, you kind of feel good for a while and then it starts to hurt. I kind of flipped that on its head with this race. I kind of had the goal going in, I said to my team, because I had my parents flew out from England, I had a couple of friends and then my partner, and we were all staying in a nice place in Fountain Hills nearby the race. I said to them before the race that I was fully prepared to blow up. In a good way. I wasn't expecting it or hoping it would happen, or worried about it, but I was comfortable with the fact that I was going to try and run a race where that might happen. Yeah, it started pretty fast. From the start, our crew temp was right at the end of the little horseshoe that you run through.
Nice.
So I checked my heart rate just from the start, the first 500 meters, and I was 185 or something. I think that's just the adrenaline of the start of the race, right? So I was just like, oh no, I need to get that down. And then obviously a lead pack went out and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get that down. So I just kind of went with the lead pack. There was 7 guys. And within probably half a kilometer, I looked behind and no one was behind us.
Wow.
So we went out pretty fast and I just tried to settle in at the back of it. I wasn't worried about getting to the front of that. I just prefer kind of stalking people at the start. So yeah, I was just in a long line in 7th at that point. And then we ran in complete silence and we were moving pretty fast. The first bit's like a little bit uphill and we were running, I think 420s kind of pace.
Geez.
But also the game plan was to move faster in that first loop purely because of the heat too.
Yeah.
Try and move faster when it was a bit cooler because it was still 20 something in the morning, but a lot cooler than it got to. Yeah. And I just was trying to hold on, to be honest. My legs felt like jelly. You know, when you go out a bit too fast in the 5K and you're like, oh yeah, my legs a little bit wobbly. My heart rate was pretty high, but I tried not to worry about it too much and I felt in control, even though that was the case. So I kind of just accepted that was happening and just kept moving and try not to push too hard at that point. But I was confident with what I was doing. And then we hit the first aid station. And even at that point, some people blew through and some people took it. So it kind of split up from there. So the pack was no longer just from the first aid station. And then, yeah, I ran still to the second aid station, which is called Jackass Junction.
Yep.
Kind of the most uphill for it. It's not too much elevation in this route, but there was the most elevation in that. And it's kind of a bit rocky and sandy. And the other thing about this race is you're also passing a lot of people because of the loop nature. And the 100-mile race started an hour before. So you're passing a lot of people. So it's mainly single track and like you have room to pass, but you're not necessarily going on the cleanest route, right? Because the people in front of you are taking like the nicest route and sometimes you happen to run up onto the rocks or whatever. So I was struggling through that bit to try and keep the pace that we'd set. And I just knew that once I got to that aid station, then there was a nice flowy downhill. So I didn't really slow down at all.
So getting into you're finishing the first loop and now getting back to the main station. Out of that, how was the transition going through? Because I know how crazy that can get to start your second loop.
Yeah, the transition, I had not an itinerary, but I wrote down what I wanted my crew to do and kind of split it into jobs for each person. Just so sometimes, obviously your crew wants to help you so much, but sometimes you have multiple things coming at you at once and you can't really, you don't know what you want at one time. So I wrote it down where they would give me one thing, I'd take it, or that one thing was happening at a time. The first time it was a little chaotic just because of the energy of that. There's hundreds of people there, so it was a little chaotic. And I came into that a little flustered because the end of that first loop is a longer section on the first loop because they added a little bit distance on because of the first loop. So I got pretty hot at the end of that first loop because I ran out of ice and water. So, and we were moving fast. So I came in, I was pretty flustered. I was hot. So it went reasonably well. Just lots of water. That's all I needed really. And it's funny because they started to pour water on me and I was like, you just need to completely submerge me. Don't worry about getting it anywhere. Just like completely. So yeah, just cooled off. I had a heart rate monitor on, as I spoke about earlier, checking my heart rate. And I took it off at that point because it was playing mind games with me.
Yeah.
Because I kept looking at my watch and I was in the 170s for the whole first loop.
Oh my gosh, Jordan.
I don't need to see this, basically.
Yeah.
So I would prefer to run on feel at that point. So just, loaded up, got my bottles and kind of got out of there as quickly as I could. And then the second loop was just about trying to hold on, to be honest.
Yeah, because when you come into the first loop, you kind of figure out what place you're in, but then now everyone gets juggled around and now you could be passing people. You don't know where they are on course now because you're not going to see them. Now they may be behind you, but you may think they're in front of you. That's quite the mind game going on now. So for strategy wise, I think you just got to settle in and play your own race and see what happens.
Totally. I actually, my dad at that point, you're in fourth place. I don't care.
But how would he care?
Yeah. I mean, I was at that point. I think because they were following the trackers or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm 35K into the race. I don't need to know yet. You know what I mean? So just try and run your own race, right? If you put your best effort out there and then you see what happens. And then the strategy can come later in the race when it gives you some impetus. But I didn't, at that point, it's hard to know that information and kind of make decisions based on it. But yeah, like you said, the nature of the race really makes it difficult to know what's going on because you don't know if you're passing people in the 100 mile.
That's right.
Or, you don't know if someone's walking in front of you. Are they in the first loop of the 100K or are they struggling and they're ahead of you?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to know what's going on, which I guess in one respect makes it difficult to race, but in another respect, it makes you focus on yourself. You can't worry about other people because you don't really know.
Right.
So I guess that helped in a way.
When did the heat really start to kick in?
The heat, to be honest, I dealt with it well all day. It was only in specific sections that I felt it. And that was just because they were a bit longer than previous sections. First, from the crew point to the first aid station is 6K. So I still have ice in me. I'm still wet at that point. So when I was wet and had ice and I had arm sleeves on, bucket hat, basically things to cover me, I chose a bucket hat because it was just a bit thicker, which is weird. My cap was lighter, but the bucket hat was a bit thicker, so it retained water a bit better.
Right.
So anything that would just keep me wet. And then there was a little bit of a breeze, which was quite nice. And then when you were wet, it was a cool breeze. When you were dry, it was quite warm. Getting to the first aid station is kind of fine. And then you reload on ice, get soaked again, get your bottles. And then the next section's a bit longer. And then just before you hit the second aid station, there's a burn section. I believe it burned earlier in the year. And that section felt way hotter than the rest of the course. And it also came at the end of the section where like your ice had run out and you were, starting to dry. And I even on the second lap, I took an extra soft flask with me purely just to drench myself.
Yeah.
So I had 2 bottles on me at all times to drink from. And then I had an extra one just to pour over my head or squirt onto my arms or whatever, which helped. But I definitely was still running out of that. So it felt hot in those little sections when I started to dry. But as soon as I had ice on me and was soaked, it actually felt manageable, which I guess is what helped me. Yeah.
Were you seeing a lot of carnage at that point or?
On the second lap, no. I think how it just timed out, I didn't pass too many people in any of the races, which was nice because I didn't have to worry about telling people I was coming past. On the third lap, for sure, that's when we started to see some people being carried out to aid stations.
Oh, geez.
Medics were coming out onto the race course. Saw a lot of people I think they just had medics patrolling on bikes, just making sure people were okay. Yeah, people laying down.
Wow.
Carnage, for sure. Yeah.
What was the time of your first and second loop?
I think first loop, I not when I came in, but I left crew spot in about 2:48.
Okay.
I believe.
And second loop?
I think my second loop was 2:50 something.
Okay. So now you're starting your third loop, and now you know under 3 hours, if all goes well, under 3 hours, I'm going to get this thing done. Is that what you're thinking?
Kind of.
Have you guys checked out our merch via our website, GottaRun Racing? We have some really cool swag, including the mugs that, if you've watched our YouTube video, that we drink with. Cool red mug with a cork bottom. It keeps liquids nice and cold or warm. What else do we have on there, Norm?
Well, we have our shirts that I'm wearing.
That's right. You can either choose from GottaRunPodcast or GottaRun Racing. You can also find our 20-liter dry bags, which are a steal at $25. Perfect for using it drop-off bag at an aid station. We've got flasks. We also have cooling multifunctional neckwear, which is a fancy word for a cooling buff. Has the GottaRun Racing and Podcast logos on it. Not to mention, we have the affiliate links for the 3 companies, for the 3 brands that we are affiliated with, that being Air Relax, Compression Therapy, Caffeine Bullet, and Kinesis Sunscreen. So by following those links, you can access exclusive discounts. So do check that out, GottaRunRacing.com.
To be honest, the second loop, the classic thoughts were coming into my head about, I don't know how I'm going to do this, right? Honestly, I thought about dropping multiple times, which is funny to think now. It's just it's so hard to think of how far you have to go at that point and the pace you need to sustain to do what you want to achieve.
Right.
But luckily, those thoughts would come in and I would just let them float past and do their thing, just watch them go. So they didn't worry me too much. At the end, just quickly, at the end of the second loop, I knew I was in 4th, and then I passed 3rd place male, and he was walking right at the end. So that's the boost I needed at that point. Yeah. I was feeling pretty bad up until that point, and then I passed and I was like, okay, you're moving well. Don't worry too much, right? And then going into the 3rd loop is where you can pick up a pacer.
Right.
Okay.
So I had my friend John pacing me from there, and then I wasn't thinking too much about the finish at that point. My main goal at that point was just to get to that second aid station, Jackass Junction, because I knew that was the part I was struggling on a little bit, just because it was just a slightly uphill and it was a bit warmer. And I knew if I got to that point, then all I needed to do was kind of let gravity take me downhill.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the best part.
It doesn't quite work like that. It's not quite as easy as that, but in my mind, that was like a big checkpoint. Just get that point. And obviously you break it down just into aid stations too, right? When you can find more ice and kind of reset. So I was just trying to, stay present and do what I could in the moment and not think too far ahead, which I think was my biggest strength on the day. I didn't really think too much about anything, which, I just focused on what I was doing in the moment. Yeah. And we kind of grinded it out to that halfway point. I made some loud noises. There was these safety markers on the course. I guess if you're having trouble, and then you can quote the letter of the alphabet that where you're near, like I'm near G, come help me or whatever. So on the second loop, I had been taking note of what letter was just before each aid station.
Okay.
So I told my pacer, I was like, okay, we just need to get to J. And then, so each letter we would talk about it. And then I remember at one point, he said something about thinking of names for the letters. And then we passed I, and I just shouted out igloo. And then he was like, what? Are you seeing igloos? We've got real problems. I was like, no, I, igloo. We're nearly there. So that helped just kind of break it down. The smaller chunks I could break it down into, the better. So I just kind of, as soon as I hit one, would tick off to the next one and just kind of put my head down. I stared at his feet and kind of tried to make my mind go a bit blank and just run. It was definitely a challenging section because it was obviously getting hotter at that point too. We were running in the heat of the day. It got up to 40 degrees, which is the hottest the race has ever been.
Wow.
And at that point, that's what the temperature was, right? Yeah. So just trying to like focus the things you can manage and not think about the rest of things. So just trying to, if I feel hot, trying to pour water over me or taking drinks, making sure I'm eating, all that stuff. You know what I mean? Taking electrolyte tablets. So yeah.
You were surrounded in that last lap, I assume, by the top 2 females who actually were the overall winners. Did you share any kilometers with those top women at all in the last loop?
They actually both passed me on the second loop.
Okay.
So the lady who finished first passed me about halfway through the second lap.
Okay.
Through that burn area I talked about earlier, she passed me that, and I was struggling from the heat, and she stormed past me at that point. She looked really strong. So I don't think we even shared an exchange. She just kind of passed. But then the second place female caught up with me in the last section of the second loop. And then she passed me, and then I just tried to stick with her as much as I could. So I just ran behind her for a little while. And then we passed the guy who was walking, and then that gave me a bit of a kick. So I just kind of took off and then left her for a bit. And then she caught back up before the second loop. And then we had a chat. Yeah, we just kind of chatted it in for the last few kilometers. And then we came into that last crew spot together. But then I didn't see her again. I didn't, because that's the issue with the cruise bus, right? You don't know when each person's leaving. Right. So I didn't know if I'd left before her or if she had left before. So I didn't see her after that. And
you don't know where the first place male was?
Or second place?
I've been told the stories of what happened, but I didn't know. Apparently, so came into third in that last crew spot. And then I got told that second place male was in the crew spot and I left before them.
Okay.
So obviously I didn't see them. And then the first place male dropped out at Jackass Junction.
Wow.
So about 20 Ks in the finish, dropped out. I guess they were in the aid station when I went through. So we didn't actually pass anyone on the trail. And then late after the race, I went to the medic tent. I just had some black toenails. It wasn't anything too crazy, but I just wanted to get them looked at. And then the first place male was there and he had a IV drip.
Oh, dear.
No.
So I guess it was an electrolyte issue.
Right.
So yeah, that's why when I finished, I didn't know what place I was in. I didn't actually pass anyone.
Right. That's crazy.
Yeah, while running.
So when you're still out in the desert and you see the oasis of the finish line coming closer and closer, what is going through your mind at this point?
Not much, to be honest. You know what I mean?
Can't wait for this thing to be over.
Yeah. I mean, I was enjoying it at that point. I definitely was excited for it to be over, but I felt like I had a little bit more in the tank, if I'm being honest. I think muscularly I was breaking down. I had a few twangs here and there when I would take certain steps. My right groin was making some not so nice yellow twangs, and I was worried that would actually cramp or pull at some point. So I think my legs were breaking down, but I feel like energy-wise, I had a little bit left to give, which I said to my pacer in the last section, because at the time I thought I was in third place male. I was like, I think if someone catches us, I have enough to like fight it off. And at that point, it's that risk of, do I push harder now, even though like I'm in a good position and it could go badly, or just we move efficiently.
Right.
And if something happens, I have something. So yeah, we were moving efficiently and I felt like I had stuff to give. So when we got to the end, it was just joyous, really. I saw my parents. They were at the start of, because you come into camp and you still have to run the full loop around camp to get to the finish line. So my parents were there, which was really great to see them. That gave me a little boost. And then I was kind of like striding through I've never had better form in my life. Because the energy from the crew tents and everything is just incredible. So I felt great at the finish, but I was definitely happy to be done. It's a hard day out there. Yeah. Someone asked me as soon as I finished, would you do 2 more loops? And I probably can't say what I said on that.
And then they told you that you won, which was probably the biggest surprise of the day in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Because again, in my mind, I thought I was, safely on the podium, which was a goal going in. And yeah, I was just so shocked to hear that because we just had no idea we'd passed anyone. So
That's
yeah, it was
awesome.
incredible. Great feeling. It couldn't have worked out better, really. Like, that's such a fun way to find out.
Yeah, so
Surprise!
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting to know whether I would have known that during the race, how it would have played out,
yeah.
right? Because that could affect your mind. And like, maybe I would have ran harder and blew up, or harder and finished quicker. You don't know, right? So I think it worked out how it was meant to be on the day. And it was incredible to share that experience with everyone who was there with me
Mhm.
Yes.
at that moment.
Yeah.
That was really cool. Someone actually was able to capture that moment on video, which is cool to look back and see my face when I found out. And then I proceeded to ask the people associated with the race multiple times whether that was correct.
Oh gosh.
Well, big congrats. You did finish in around 8:40 and absolutely amazing. Where is this big award that they give you? The big skull statue? What do you call
Well,
those things?
I don't know if they change the theme every year, but I'm sure you got a lovely trophy.
I did. Yeah, I don't have it actually on me. I host a run club here. I work at a brewery, so I host a run club there. So I took it in last night to show to some people who want
Aw.
to see it. So it's actually there right now for them. Yeah, I can send a picture for sure. It's a very cool Day of the Dead
Day of the
style
Dead, that's
trophy.
right.
They still do that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, really cool skull guy with a little hat on, and yeah, it's cool. That actually went through my mind in the last lap. I was like, I want one of those trophies.
Yeah, they're pretty epic.
They're so interesting, right? They're so different to anything you've ever seen
They really
in
are.
the race world.
They really.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Well, tell us about Steel and Oak Brewery and your connection with them, because we are curious. We love to drink beer, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, I've worked. They're just a local craft brewery in the city I live in. I've worked there for, I think, coming up to six years. So most of the time I've lived here, basically. Yeah, they traditionally started making German beer, and then now they kind of make a mixture of beers. But I'm biased. In my opinion, some of the best beer in BC. Before I joined, it was my favorite brewery.
Oh wow!
So yeah, I like to drink craft beer, and it's a cool spot because the city we live in, New West, is quite a small community, and it allows my job. It allows me to engage the community, so I get to do lots of fun things. So yeah, I get to host a run club, which has been going for coming up to 3 years next month. 3 years.
Awesome.
We started just outside of COVID. And yeah, we get big turnouts. In the spring, we were getting like 100 people.
Wow!
80 to 100 people every week,
Oh, wow.
which is huge.
You might see us there one day.
For sure. Yeah. The day with your name on it. It's just great. It's like a social place for people to, I think it's hard for people, especially nowadays, coming out of COVID to meet new people and people that are interested in the same thing. So it's a really cool group that gets to meet and hang out. And then I also, with Steel and Oak, organized a race. This year was the second time we've done it. So it's just a 5K in our local park. We sold out both years. This year we had 300 people
Nice.
running. Yeah. And we're hoping to do more next year. So
Very good.
yeah, it's cool to be able to like work at a place where I love the beer, but then also get to put my twist on it and get some running involved too.
Have yourself a beer mile.
We've done a couple of unofficial beer miles.
Oh.
So each year we do an Oktoberfest celebration at the brewery, and then I've coincided that with a beer mile. So we did do one this year, and it's a popular event. Thinking next year of maybe trying to get a track and make it more of an official kind of beer mile.
Why not?
I don't know his name, but I do know that the world record holder of the beer mile is Canadian, I do believe, and I think he's from BC.
Yeah,
So get
I
him.
think his name's Corey Belmore.
Who's that?
Corey Belmore or Belmont?
That's
That
right.
sounds right.
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
You should invite him.
I should invite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you seen that video? He tried to break his record and he loses a shoe on the last lap. He's running. Yeah, you should see it. He's running the last lap with one shoe and he nearly breaks it. He's like a few seconds off the record.
Wow.
And it's a 4-something mile while drinking beer
Gosh.
with one shoe on. It's another level. It's great.
So what's next for you?
Yeah. What's the big bucket list races you want to do now?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out right now. I need to do some like research of where I want to put my focus next year. I have a couple of definites that I will be doing. I'm going to start the year in February there's a half marathon here called the First Half, which I've never done before because it sells out, I think, within a day.
Oh, wow.
It's incredibly popular and it's a very fast race. So I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to do Chuckanut again.
Now everyone's going to be looking for you at Chuckanut. They're going to say, "Oh no, now we got to watch out for this guy."
Yeah,
hopefully. Yeah, I'd love to really execute a good race there. I don't think I've ever felt I've ran well there, but I don't think I've ever felt like I've executed a good race there.
What about stage races? You do what you can one day, and then you go back and do 30K. You go back, you do another 60K. You go back.
Stage racing has never really interested me as much. Like I would rather I'm sure you've heard of the Squamish 50.
Mm-hmm.
They do a 50-50, which is 50 miles one day, 50K the next day. In my mind, I'd rather just run that in one go. You know what I mean? I'd rather not go to sleep and get up. I'd rather just run it back to back.
Yeah.
I think more 100 miles would be a goal first before stage racing. So yeah, I'm going to do Chuckanut for sure. Go on the lottery for Western States. I'm going to go on the lottery for UTMB.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be like a big goal of the year. And then who knows what else? Maybe Javelina 100 mile.
Nice.
And yeah, I guess the good thing about Western States lottery is it's in a month's time, right? So I can make a decision whether I'm in or not of what to do after that.
Right.
But yeah, if I didn't get into Western States, I would need to make some kind of decision for the summer.
That's right. I'm not doing anything until that lottery's over.
It's hard to know, right?
No, it's hard to know.
It is.
It could change your whole summer.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. So I need to maybe have a backup plan for that time of the year, or potentially maybe look at doing canyons or something in April and trying to get in that way.
Cool.
Very good. Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This has been great. Yeah. I appreciate you reaching out.
We love Javelina, and of course, we want to support our fellow Canadians when they do well there. All right, so let's do some rapid fire. We just have some fun little things to end the podcast off with. What's the last concert you went to?
Rapid fire.
No, I can't remember.
No?
Let's say Arctic Monkeys.
Arctic Monkeys.
It wasn't last year. That was recent.
Do you have any tattoos?
I have a lot of tattoos. Yes. Ribs everywhere.
We're just laughing, listener, because we can see Jordan's arms, and he does have several.
Yeah.
And some hidden ones.
So what's your post-run treat? What do you go to for replenishing that's maybe considered junk food?
Every 100K I've done. Actually, this one I didn't, but before that, it was fish and chips.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
that'd be good.
How British of you.
I know. I don't eat fish and chips any other time.
Really?
No, I never eat it. I don't know. But after races, fish and chips, a burger, pizza.
Yeah. All the greasy stuff. What's a TV show that you're embarrassed to say you watch?
Oh, embarrassed. I don't really watch much TV, to be honest.
No.
The thing I'm watching right now is Taskmaster, which is an English
I've heard of that
show with comedians where they do tasks.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not embarrassed to say I watched that, but that is the only thing I watch right now. I don't even have a TV. So
okay.
I'm out running too much.
Our niece and nephew's been trying to get us to watch that because we love reality TV. So we'll have to definitely put it on.
Highly recommend it. It's hilarious.
Okay.
And all the episodes are free on YouTube.
Oh, nice. Even better.
Yeah.
Okay, this one might be tricky because I don't know if you've experienced it, but if Nanaimo bar or butter tart?
Nanaimo.
Have you had a butter tart?
Yeah, I've had both.
Okay.
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd go Nanaimo.
I think you kind of have to because you live in BC, so that's why it was a test.
I'm more of a chocolate guy, so.
Would you rather be a professional writer, painter, or musician?
Musician. I actually grew up, I played the drums.
Oh, okay.
Very good.
Yeah, and I went to university for music production and sound recording.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
There you
I have
go.
a background in music, so I'd say musician for sure.
So maybe we need to cut out the concert question because you're letting down your fellow musicians of not remembering.
Right? I'm gonna remember later what I've seen more recently than Arctic Monkeys. But
You could text us later or let us know. And then
Yeah.
I'm going to 2 concerts. Well, one on Saturday and one on Monday. So
Oh, nice.
which are
Saturday is a band called Origami Angel, which is like a emo punk band. and then modern one. And then on Monday is a band called Dayglow. It's kind of like a modern pop band.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
All right.
We're too old
Yeah.
to know those.
One day.
All right, Norm.
Pick a superpower that you'd like to have.
Teleportation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. That's a popular one.
It'd be good to visit family, you know what I mean? Just pop over back to England.
Yeah.
Or-
Preview a course. A race
Yeah,
course.
exactly. Yeah, do an altitude training. You know,
Yeah.
easily.
Start to finish in one shot.
Yeah.
All right, Jordan. Thank
Thanks.
you so much.
Thanks so much.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you both.
All right.
But we're definitely going to stay in touch because
We love beer and we
we love beer. We love mountains. And so we want to come and visit. Maybe we'll come and do the beer mile.
Yeah, if you're out here, definitely come. Yeah.
And I hope that you and I can toe the line at Western States next year.
There you go.
Yeah, I agree. I'll be looking for your name on the list.
Okay.
That's
yours too.
some positive attitude into the solar system. Yeah.
There we go.
All right.
Well, if you get in next year, we'll have you on again because it's another experience like Javelina that you will cherish forever.
Yep.
Totally. Yeah. And at least now I know I can deal with the heat, so
There you
I'm not too
go.
worried about that.
And Scott Jurek is always known to be there at an aid station helping
Yeah,
you
that's
out.
true.
Yeah. He was a Javelina, actually. He was pacing someone.
Really?
Ah, very good.
Oh,
I didn't go up to I bottled it. I didn't go up to him, but he was there. I was like, oh my God, Scott Jurek. Yeah, it was cool. Kind of a full circle moment.
that's awesome.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Jordan, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thank you both.
Thank you.
Great to
Cheers.
meet you both.
Nice to meet
Yeah,
you too.
chat soon.
Bye.
And that was Jordan Brett, fresh off his win at Javelina 100K.
Brings back so many good memories of Javelina, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's always nice to talk to people who've done it for the first time. And then, because I remember when we did it, it was a whole other experience because now it's such a show. It's such a show.
Well, even from the time that you did it to the time that I did it, it had,
Yeah, and that was a 3-year gap
yeah,
between those. Oh,
crazy. It was more than that.
well, I did it in 16.
Oh, right. 3 years. I should never doubt you when it comes to years. But I do feel bad for the people who went for the first time and DNF'd because of the heat.
Yes, I agree. And I just forgot to say that his time is now in the top 10. He's 8th overall best time for the 100K male.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
Considering the heat, that's pretty good achievement.
yeah, I know. And he could still have one more loop in him. In hindsight, we say that now. But would he have made it back to Jackass? Who knows? And doing Javelina after you came back from Mexico, that's kind of ties in with the awards, eh?
Dia de los Muertos. Yes, it does. I wasn't sure if they kept that theme, but of course they do because it's Halloween too. But their awards are one of a kind.
What do you call that type of award?
Well, it depends on the design. I know they had Katrinas and Katrines and they had skulls.
right.
and-
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
So that's representative of Day of the Dead for sure. It's a party in the desert.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh, I forgot to ask him about was his bucket hat that he wore. That was his costume.
Oh yeah, I meant to ask too if what crazy costumes he saw. I did think of that and forgot.
Oh, well. We'll get him back on after Western. I say, remember when you did Javelina? What was that costume?
Yeah, see if he remembers. Oh boy.
All right.
Okay.
If you liked our episode, please leave a rating review. We'd much appreciate it.
Absolutely. Until next time.
Cheers.